and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host, Chris Branch. Now, this is the daily 10-minute podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, content creator, and marketer wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only focus on one particular subject. And today we're going to talk about a subject that is quite, it's not popular right now, but we believe it will be very popular and very soon. And that is to do with using AI as companions. So let me just explain what I mean by this if you don't know what I'm talking about. Right now, I can go to ChatGPT and I write in a prompt or even speak a prompt and it gives me an answer. Or I say, hey, Siri, what's the time? And it gives me an answer. I'm not talking that. I'm talking the next stage where I'll say, oh, I'm having a really bad day. And then it responds back, oh, why was it so bad? So you're having those conversations. And this technology is available right now. And that's essentially what we want to talk about because this area is going to be growing. And it'd be interesting to kind of, we'll give our thoughts. And again, wherever you're listening to this, there's places where you can comment. It'd be good to hear your thoughts. So, Chris, when it comes to this comparison AI, like sites like pi.ai, what's your overall thoughts before we kind of go into a bit more detail?
So first thoughts is I just hope they are more secure with the data than other AI platforms, because that's obviously very vital personal information that you're going to be giving it. And not just, can you solve my business issue, but more like, I'm suffering from this mental health issue, which is far more personal. But I think it's natural. I think these AIs and what we do when we do diaries and therapy, it's all a self-reflection, right? And so that's what these AIs are going to be able to do in a way in which you might actually reveal more to an AI because you don't feel the judgment from another human. So like, think about the things that you'd enter into TikTok versus what you'd ask your mate, like there's or Google or something like that. Your Google history looks a lot more dark and sinister than what you're willing to talk to your mates about. So in that same sense, I think it's a very good thing that we might actually start to, self-diagnose and have some stuff revealed to us that we may not have been able to take from another human being as being comfortable or even accept it, but that is the tragic thing is, do we trust the AI? Do we trust it as like another human being in order to truly diagnose what it is that we're suffering from?
So I think trust plays a big part.
Big time.
I don't know if one of the most downloaded apps is character.ai, and character.ai, there's different characters that you can speak to essentially. And Pi, as I mentioned before, is another one. And there's a few of them. Facebook's put a lot of money into this, or Meta's put a lot of money into this space as well. But one of the most popular characters is therapists, because a lot of people, especially young people, are finding it easier to speak to an AI therapist who will give them advice. Now, the key word there is gives them advice, or gives them, or listens to them. And even if they respond back, people may take that as advice. And that's where trust goes into it. It's one area of trust. Do people act on what the AI has said? And now you might think, oh, I'd never do that. But the AI is also looking at millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of data points to give their answer. So this is going to play a big part. And as you mentioned, trust is going to be a key area in this.
And it's difficult to trust when you know that the platform can potentially hallucinate. And I think that's one of the biggest underlying issues with this technology is it's looking to please us, even though it might not know exactly how to respond or accurately respond. So as soon as the hallucination part is taken up, and I've seen a lot of progress in this, by the way, especially AIs that are trained on medical papers, for example, and that's all that they're trained on. They're not trained on the wider internet and stuff that has just total nonsense in it that could potentially bleed through, like Reddit or Wikipedia or places where anyone can type anything they want with no medical background, and that's really what happens. So like we said at the very start of this podcast that one of the biggest places for AI to help us is in our mental health. But the issue with all of that is that it's also the most liable to, you're going to sue a company if they tell you the wrong thing. So you have to get it right, even though it's going to be so good for us. It can't be something that you can get wrong. So it's a lot harder than, if you ask AI to write you a creative story, it doesn't matter what it says to you. Like, there's no consequences to that creative story. Whereas if it tells you to take this medication or that medication or this, you could die. And that's seriously a big issue.
Yeah, I don't think it will get to that point where it's telling you to take the medication, but I see what you mean. Because the reason why we came up with this, or the reason why we're talking about this, is because we was reading a really interesting article that this lady, let me give the lady credit. Her name was Stephanie Power, and she was talking about her husband is a Liverpool supporter, and she doesn't like being around him because obviously if they win, if they lose, moods change, and essentially one day she was hearing him speaking and hearing a female voice talking back. And she was like, who's that? And then realized it was an AI companion. And it was calming him down, essentially. I think Liverpool played Arsenal and, of course, lost. So when you hear it like that, you just hear some of the fun ways to do it. And I think that's really interesting, the way you can use it from that point of view. But it also then, because then it started making me think, if you just break it down from what it is. I speak to an AI and it does this and responds back, not something, but in a conversational way. That there changes customer service for a business. That there also changes Siri and Alexa, which is, as I said before, I ask it, it does this. So this whole companion space, and then without going into two conspiracy Black Mirror episodes, essentially there's a few Black Mirror episodes that does this, bringing people back to life and having conversations. So it's almost at the beginning stages of a huge revolution.
Definitely.
When it comes to AIs, bringing AI to life like a human. Again, this is something that some people will look at as exciting, and this is some people will look at and think, I've seen this movie before, I know how it ends, and it's not good for us. So that's also the area. Is this something that you think you'll try?
Oh yeah, definitely, because if you think about all of the things that's being decentralized here, video, art, text, all of these things, therapy and education around therapy and mental health is one of the biggest ones. So few people can actually afford a therapist. Yeah. And in America, they do have these good things called sliding scale, depending on how much you earn is how much you pay as to a therapist. But even then, I think there was a big rise in what's called betterhelp.com during the pandemic, which is essentially online therapy, which is a lot cheaper, and they match you with stuff. But this has all been leading to an AI could do this, rather than, it's just become digitized and online and stuff. I'm going to read a comment that we received on our podcast yesterday, because I thought this was one of my favorite things that I've actually read when it came to, people opening up about how technology like AI is helping them. This guy called Justin Brown basically said, as a person with high functioning autism spectrum disorder, ChatGPT has fundamentally changed the way that I'm able to articulate and communicate with people around me. And I just thought that was fascinating, like what he's got in his head, he hasn't been able to articulate accurately to other people, but given his prompts and the rewriting of his thoughts into coherent text, that is able to genuinely change his life. And that's just ChatGPT. So you imagine just what else can be unlocked through these, mental health AI tools that are specifically made for that. ChatGPT clearly wasn't, but it's already doing that for him. So it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things I say to people is that if you feel comfortable with it, if you don't feel comfortable with it, again, it's entirely up to you. Like, it's obviously how you feel. But try some of these tools just to see how it works. A lot of AI is about just trial and error. Is it work for me? Do I feel comfortable with it? Because essentially they're just tools at the moment. And Character AI, Pi.ai, obviously they're going to include it in Facebook. They're all available. So again, if it's something of interest, have a go and see if you can use it and see if it actually helps. And if it does, or if it doesn't, let us know.
And from my own personal experiences with therapy, after I sadly lost my dad too early, one of the biggest feedbacks I'd say to people is you need to be willing and welcoming to this. Because if you just instantly say this isn't going to help me or isn't going to work, it won't work. You need to have the right mindset going in order to accept it eventually. So just be
very,
careful
very
about
true.
that.
Very, very true. Brilliant. So in a nutshell, this is going to be the whole character AI and bringing these AIs to life, essentially. It's at the beginning stages, but it's also, like in other things that we've mentioned, a watch this space. It's definitely something that could be revolutionary in many ways, not just from a mental health therapy point of view, but from a customer service point of view and pretty much anything else.